on. So let's start with the fullbacks because I think that's a good place to start. And there's a comment here regarding Wan Bissaka. Sort of the first touch in the movement to make a play are very poor for a potential title-winning side. I think Wan Bissaka. Let's start, Rob, with sort of what's going on off field because I think that's important. Players are humans; they're not robots. We expect them to go onto the pitch. We're all guilty of it and expect them to just give 110% and to not even think about things that go outside the pitch. But these things do affect. You have to look at Maguire, obviously last season with the whole Greece incident. Obviously, Wan Bissaka was it a driving ban or he's been in, he's in trouble for that. He doesn't look himself, does he, Rob? Last season we spoke about Wan Bissaka a lot, and one of the big things that a modern fullback needs to have is they need to be able to go forward. They need to be able to, be able to offer something in terms of beating a man, putting balls into the box, also in the build-up. Wan Bissaka is a bit of a problem right now for Manchester United right back. I think that right back position is a bit of a problem. I think he was a weak link in the build-up. The amount of times the attack sort of broke down or he'd have the ball and he'd look inside again. Mason would do the same. I think Sancho was doing that as well at times. And we will talk about Sancho, guys. I know there's a question on Sancho. But what can United do? Because obviously you need to be attacking with width when you're playing against teams that sit back. And Manchester United didn't do that very well for me. They didn't exploit the wide channels. With teams that are sitting back, you either have to play with width or you have to play the ball quickly. And United didn't do either, did they? There was a lot of sort of too many touches on the ball, passing it in and around a bit slowly. But what did Manchester United do with the fullback positions? Because Luke Shaw, obviously, is starting to get into a bit of good form again. And Shaw does it very well. I mean, the carry is just... And the assist for Ronaldo is exactly what Shaw does really, really well. Very progressive, very effective. I mean, what does Wan Bissaka have to do? Because it's the same problems again and again and again. I mean, Dalot must be sitting there thinking, you know what? If he can improve his defense and he can get some game time, he could be taking that right back spot.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is with Wan Bissaka is just like maybe several in the squad, they're playing for their places. They're playing to prove that they are United players for the long term. Now, Wan Bissaka, we've talked a lot about him on this show in the last 12 months for different reasons. We've talked about the channel, the way that he kind of guards inside, the way that he's maybe a bit too keen to go into a tackle. We've talked about his chemistry with inside with Victor Lindelof. What we're seeing now is that, and I described this to you off air, he looks a little bit like a former footballer. And what I mean by that is he's not doing anything well at the moment for me. He really isn't. He's not driving the ball. He's refusing to cross when he should. He's not creating the space with Mason on that side, so he's not overlapping. He's not helping Mason kind of drill through the channel. He's not carrying the ball successfully, and he's also now getting done behind. So it's pretty much everything. Now, when you win 4-1, you can forget about it. No one needs to worry about it too much. Yeah, you conceded one goal. But we saw how bad that one goal was. A lot of people think United get done on the counter-attack. And when we talk about United statistically, last year we kind of looked into it and we saw that United don't actually really get done on the counter, generally because Maguire is a little bit more conservative and so is Lindelof, and they would kind of sit and not allow the space to happen for the counter. But what happened yesterday? Both the fullbacks were at fault, miles out of position, kind of all over the place. It gets kind of slashed away. They get done the wrong side of the halfway line, and suddenly they're there. And Harry Maguire has some kind of brain freeze and dives in when
Which
he doesn't need to.
Never does. He's actually very composed. Maguire,
Never seen him do it. Never seen him do it. So ultimately, it's a bad decision, and it's not necessarily a bad performance from the player, but I think when you're looking at Wan Bissaka and his individual talents and what he can do and what we expect from him this season, he's nowhere near, but he's not the only one. So, as I said, there's for me yesterday were 5 players specifically, and we will talk about it through the show individually, each talent and who did what. But it was too much, Haider. It's like I'm stood there watching the game, and I'm just thinking. I'm not thinking, oh, yeah, that's great, or that was brilliant, that passage of play was fantastic. I'm just thinking, there's too many negatives happening here. Why are we walking with the ball everywhere? Why are we not driving it? Why is their channels just open and everyone is just stood around looking at them? It's weird. So these are things that you could look at Ole and say to the manager, go and sort it out, because that's your job as a coach. You've got to kind of get your players primed to do the right things. Or you could look at these players and say, why are you not doing it? I'm just watching Liverpool here before we go live, and I'm watching Liverpool's midfield, none of them being, particularly, stellar attacking players in their own right. all driving the ball, getting it on the deck and going 30 yards and getting the ball to Salah in a nice area, getting the ball to Mane in a nice area.
Which is what you want with Sancho and Mason, and they weren't.
And that didn't happen yesterday at all. And you could argue and say it's not happened this season yet. First game, yes, United played some good stuff, but since then it's been tepid.